stay the course. And I was like, what do people need to hear? I was like, sometimes I just ask that because to generate a topic in my thought. Like, what do people need to hear? Like, Spirit, give me a word. And it's like, stay the course. I don't know why, but it seems like maybe it's mid-year, maybe it's because it's summertime and energy's ramping up, and it's generally when people are going to get it. And you're inspired to go get it. Longer days. This is kind of like the meat and potatoes of like the grind and the hustle. And I think kind of alluding from what we were saying last time, just about staying the course. And it's almost like a series because it seems like the past 2-3 episodes were very similar as far as being the lighthouse, picking up your anchor, not being a tugboat.
Yep.
And then last week, leveraging both dual energies of admiration as well as hatred.
Right.
When you're shining your light brightly, you're attracting more of both.
Right.
And how do you leverage both? And we're talking about like a plane when it's trying to increase its elevation and it's trying to go higher. And I was saying like a jetpack, if we only leverage one energy source or one fuel source being admiration, we're never going to get to the altitude, that was the word, that we expect to get to based on all our work ethic, because we keep getting knocked off track, spinning around, because once we try to go higher, we need that to be able to embrace that alternative source. So staying the course, how do you stay the course and not continually get stuck in this cyclical loop of inspiration, motivation, action, movement, pace, go mode, and then hit that low mode, right? We get lost in whatever, get sidetracked. Somebody says something happens, we hit a setback. Some circumstantial happens in our life that kind of distracts us.
Right.
How do we not get distracted so that we can stay the course? And I think initially this morning when I was kind of just seeking for a topic top of mind about stay the course, it's most like about your spirit, protecting your energy. I heard something talking along those lines about if you are investing your time in going somewhere, you have to protect your energy unapologetically, to the sense of there's a lot of people when you're doing and when you're moving, and it garners respect over everything else, whether it's love or hate. You're going to be respected because you're willing to be courageous enough to go and to push and to chase your dreams, and people respect that. Kind of like when you see somebody built, you respect the discipline and the sacrifice that they're putting in, and so it makes you look at them in a higher regard. They can be a not good character type of a human. You don't know that, but initially when you look at that person getting out of the Lambo, you automatically go to your preconceived notion of you had to do something substantial in order to get that.
Yeah.
Right? If you're in a certain room, you had to do something substantial in order to get invited into this room. You see that body, you had to do something consistently in order to sustain that body.
Right.
So it's a level of respect. And I think that when we see people going to get it or working towards something, we definitely have that respect, but it's attention grabbing, right? You're not paying attention to the person jumping out of what you would consider a low value vehicle. But you're paying attention to that Ferrari, that Porsche, that Lambo, that Bentley. It catches your attention. It almost makes you want to go and talk to that person. Makes you want to go and engage and be like, hey, hi. You know what I mean? They walk by, you're like, hi. Other people may go unseen because they may not be catching your attention. They're not being attractive, right? And so the more that you step into your purpose, we can call that authenticity. We can call that confidence. The more that you step into your purpose with confidence, and one thing that I always remind myself when I'm feeling kind of away is it takes cojones to go for it. Right? It's easy to sit back and like, nah, I don't want to face the fear. I don't want to face doubt. I don't want to face rejection. I don't want to face adversity. I don't want to face negative energy, right? And I always tell myself, man, it takes cojones to go get it. And then it challenges me as a man. I'm like, that's a cojones. And then it lets me offset those feelings of doubt, insecurity, right? Immediately, once I trigger myself in that mode of, bro, what you want takes confidence, takes ferocity. It takes a relentless amount of belief to continue to push on and jump the next hurdle, the next hurdle, the next hurdle. If you stop at the hurdle that you tripped over, you'll never finish the race. And nobody likes the quitter.
Yep.
We like that person that's running and gunning, and boom, they fall and they stumble. And everybody in the back of our mind, some people may laugh, some people may whatever, ooh and ah. But in the back of my mind, we're like, get up. Man, he should just get up.
Yep.
Just get up. And how many inspiring stories do we see of people when they get up? And it's almost like we're inspired most when we see people facing adversity. Don't lay and roll. Oh, we almost lose a little respect. It's like, oh, it's a little pity. You're getting attention in a negative way for a moment. Like, oh man, that's bad. That's unfortunate. But what about the one that gets up bloody, ankle rolled, and you see them just hobbling? It shows a level of strength and tenacity in that individual. And they may be last place, but they were victorious in the mind of the spectator because they pushed through. They did something that takes grit, that takes ferocity, and we respect that. And so today, staying the course for me, when I thought about that, was like, be fearless. Choose you first. Protect your energy, right? Yep. Create a boundary around your focus. Don't be afraid to say no. I think a lot of times the attention that we want or that we're seeking along the path, we want the admiration first, something you said last week. We want to eat the steak and the top quality meal first, you know.
Yep.
We want the highest level meal first. But sometimes you got to eat the oatmeal all day long. You know, you got to eat something that's just purposeful for a while before you can get things that are pleasurable to your taste buds. So you got to be willing to run through purpose. And I think part of that purpose is absorbing, feeling those feelings of doubt, fear, and insecurity, absorbing them, but not allowing them to hold you down. I think that's where that cojones comes from. Not allowing that hurdle you stumbled over and that rolled ankle and that busted knee to stop you. You've been training day in, day out, year after year, sweating, running, getting up, training for this race, and now you're going to tell me you're not going to finish? Forget where you finished at. You're not going to finish for you. You're not going to keep pressing forward for you. You're not going to continue on for you and your family and your last name and your lineage and all of those people who are looking up to you. It ain't about winning the race at this point. It's about winning your own race, which is, I didn't do all this hard work to quit.
Yeah.
Right? I did all this hard work to at least finish what I said I was going to do. And then when you finish, you almost now are feeding that, what they say, two wolves, right?
Yep.
You got the wolf, the negative wolf and the positive wolf. You're feeding that wolf of consistency.
Sure.
You're feeding those behaviors of discipline and determination and the willingness to continue to go through. And that plants a seed that you can do it again. And so later on down the road, once you come up against a bigger hurdle, and you stumble again. Yeah. Now it's not even a thought. It's
now you got the muscle memory, but you also have the muscle memory of you remembering the way you pushed through.
Boom.
Right. So a couple of words as you were going through that. Completely agree with what you were saying. So there was a couple of words as you were going through that I was picking and kind of putting aside to come back and circle back on. So number one is the word capacity, and it's a very interesting word when a person is doing introspective work. Doing introspective work as you're defining your purpose, right? And I would argue that all of us as men, or women as well, people in general have the same purpose in life. And I think the purpose in life, rather than everyone just, you got to figure out your purpose, you got to find your purpose. Like, all right, well, or you could look at it from the perspective of your purpose is to identify and maximize your capacity. Now, what I mean by that is it's much easier to live the grind culture, live the hustle culture, and just say, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the work. But if you're doing the work on the wrong things because you don't have the capacity to excel or whatever it is that you're working on, it doesn't matter how much work you put in. If someone put in the exact same amount of work that Kobe did, but they were 5'2", they don't have the capacity that's needed to be able to achieve at that high of a level. Okay? So I'd argue that it's a two-edged sword. It's the work that needs to be put in, and it's the self-awareness about understanding what your capacity is and what your God-given abilities are. So I think it's about doing that work in the beginning of that self-awareness, and also having people in your life I think that's a huge problem that a lot of young men don't have, is that they don't have enough strong men in their life that could pull them aside and say, hey, this is good for you, or hey, you know, something that I see in you, or have men speak over them. Right? I think it's a huge epidemic in the Hispanic and Black community of having men that can speak over them in a positive way rather than just ridicule and shame and guilt for what they're not.
For sure.
Right? Because that communication style that everyone seems to think is so, you know, sweet is actually detrimental to the younger generation. Man. You can see it all the time. Watch the way young Hispanic and Black kids are spoken to, right? And they're spoken to like they're pieces of shit.
For sure, man.
And then they grow up a certain way, and then they look at themselves, and then, you know, then they get ostracized for being defensive in the way someone treats them, but they've been treated that way, right? I mean, there's a thin line about understanding about how you can be playful, right, especially with men. With men, you have to be resilient. So that brings me to the third word. I'll come back to the second one, which was thick-skinned. I think that's something that isn't really spoken about, where it's this idea of what type of resiliency needs to be done in order to have thick skin. Why do you think that when a young man or a woman goes into the military, the first 8 weeks or 6 weeks, all they do is yell in their face?
Harden them.
Thicken their skin, right? Harden them. The whole idea is to thicken their skin. Now, the reason I say thicken their skin rather than harden is because, let's say, hopefully underneath stays who you are, right? But if we thicken your skin, we now make you more resilient.
And controlled.
And, huh?
And emotionally controlled.
Emotionally controlled. For you to be able to take, you know, like, you ever seen a lion just chilling? Flies are sometimes on him. Sometimes his tail will kind of whip up and whack a fly off, like, not reactive. He's not reactive because the fly, he doesn't even feel it. He's so thick-skinned, right? So that's the idea. Do we work on that with young men? Do we work on that with ourselves to make us thicker skinned, right? If you're in sales, if you don't have that, it's only a matter of time until you don't succeed. Well, life is sales. Putting yourself out there is sales. Showing the world your product is sales, right? I'd argue that some of the best positions for a young person to have growing up is sales, because that's life. How do you sell yourself to the world? How do you continuously evolve your product because there are other products out there that are competing against you, right? So why wouldn't that same exact metaphor be used for a man in the dating world, for a woman in the dating world, right? It's all sales. If you believe you have a great product, prove it. If you believe you have a great product, tell people about it. Right. If you believe you have a great product, continue to make it better. Was there one iPhone and that was it? And they said, that's the iPhone and you're going to use that for in perpetuity? No. It kept evolving. iPhone 17. That has to be you as a product. You have to continuously be evolving yourself. You have to continuously be updating your operating system. You have to continuously be finding new apps. You have to continuously need to be expanding your RAM. You have to continuously be working on your speed. You have to continuously be upgrading the model that you are. You can still be an iPhone. If you had an iPhone 17 next to an iPhone, you still know they're iPhones. They look like iPhones. They are iPhones. But the capabilities, the power, the tool of an iPhone 17 is probably 100 times exponentially more powerful than the iPhone, but it's still an iPhone. And there's a metaphor there for people. You can still be who you are. You can still be an iPhone, but are you continuously upgrading your operating system? Are you continuously making yourself available to new things that make you more powerful? Are you upgrading your camera, right? Or is your wisdom and your sight continuously upgraded? So I think there's a great metaphor there. So that's the third one, was about being thick-skinned. And what are we doing now to make ourselves, to thicken our skin on a daily basis? And with that comes also the intentionality of putting yourself in situations that are uncomfortable. So for example, let's say from the fitness perspective, could you become thicker skinned if you intentionally do cold plunges? Metaphorically and literally, right? Metaphorically speaking, is that the more you do that, the thicker your skin becomes. Not literally, it's a fucking metaphor, relax.
Great word.
But what that does is that thickens your skin. And now all of a sudden, now what did you do? You also learn from people that have done it before. And they say, listen, what you want to do is you want to breathe and count in your head. I don't know. Like you want to be like, 1 in, 3 out. And that's going to help you, right? But if you didn't intentionally put yourself in those situations to help thicken your skin, then you're not going to be able to have the capability, because then what's going to happen is that when a snowstorm comes, you've trained your body to be in that cold weather. You've taken a little bit of time to be able to know, oh, this is what's going to happen because I've done that. The exact same thing is with life. Have you put yourself in difficult situations intentionally or in a controlled environment, so that way when you're placed in an uncontrolled environment, you have a fighting chance? That's what training is, right? That's what going to the gym is about. That's what sparring is about.
Yep. Putting
yourself in controlled environments so that you can prepare yourself in a situation, so that way when you're in an uncontrolled environment, you have a better chance to succeed. Man. It doesn't guarantee success, but it does skew the favor in your odds if you've experienced that kind of cold weather, right? I'd argue that, let's say if a person played football, you played football for a long time, your brother played professionally, I would argue that the Green Bay Packers probably do a certain amount of their training in the cold. Possibly. They play more games in the cold weather, right? Buffalo Bills. They just built a new stadium and built it outdoors. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Let's think about that. Maybe it was a strategic move. Maybe it was a strategic move because they said, all right, no problem. We're Eskimos. We're used to the weather. So that way when your dolphins come here, a dolphin ain't used to this cold, motherfucker. So bring your dolphin ass here. We're about to slay you. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your cowboys, you're used to being on the range. You be on your ranch and your hot ranch. Well, you ain't used to the mountains, are you, motherfucker?
You want to get through us, you got to get through this.
And it's going to be on our turf, mm-hmm. And we train in this turf. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd argue, right? You're training your nephew right now. What are you doing? You're doing it outside. Are you doing it on a treadmill?
No.
Why?
That heat.
There you go. Same metaphor of life. Same metaphor. Are you putting in the reps, but are you thinking about the environments that you're putting those reps in? It's an interesting metaphor.
Great.
Right? So we talk about capacity. Are you identifying the capacity that you have in whatever endeavor you're taking on? We're talking about, are you working consistently on a day-to-day basis on thickening your skin and also making it a competitive advantage for yourself when you're in an environment, knowing that maybe your competitor, because life is competition. I hate that we've taken away this idea of life being competitive. You're competing against everyone at all times for all things.
1000%.
Period. End of story. Whether it be for the job, whether it be provisioning, whether it be the sale, whether it be support of your colleagues, you are 100% in competition with everyone else at all times. And based on, there are certain skews in life that we can look at, that we start to associate with those that have done better in that competition. One of them is money. One of them is the Ferrari you spoke about before.
Yes, sir.
When you see a person pull up in that, you're going to instinctively say to yourself, this person won at something, right? They won at something so much so that this was the prize, right? That was the idea behind tattoos, the art of tattoo. That meant this warrior came back from war. Number one, they survived. And number two, this is showing you an emblem of that battle. So it used to be showing the story of a warrior, to be able to read what wars they were in. And then the sailors would have the sparrows, etc., swallows. They would have the swallows meant this, and then this was the ship they were on. It was a story, right? That's since been lost, since you got people, doing fucking SpongeBob SquarePants riding a fucking dinosaur, jumping over a rainbow. Right, but the art of tattoo had to do with telling the story of winning, being competitive in all things in life, and not being afraid to say, I want to be the best, I want to compete in all things in life. And that sense of competition has been lost. And I think that we need to re-engage that sense of competition, and we need to understand that regardless of how it makes people feel, it's a fact of life. And now we're about to enter in from the business perspective, where the playing field in many instances is being leveled with AI. Now the level of intelligence that any person could have, the level of capacity that they have from an intelligence perspective, is now going to be even. So your competitive advantage, Mr. I went to law school and spent $300,000, and I've been practicing law for 20 years, your competitive advantage of the intelligence of what you picked up through those years is going to be gone. Because there's going to be an AI bot that is going to know as much, if not more than you, when it comes to cases, when it comes to historical data, when it comes to precedent, when it comes to everything that has to do with the law. A new law came out 2 hours ago. It already knows. And you're going to try and compete with that? Good luck. I think there's a lot of people out right now that are touting the capabilities of AI, and they don't realize that they're going to be in competition with AI sooner or later. I don't think enough people understand that. They're in competition with AI eventually. So now the question is that, okay, how do you harness it? How do you say to yourself, okay, cool, I'm going to view AI like a horse. I could get a certain place one way, or I could figure out how to tame the horse, and that horse will take me further because I can expend less energy getting to where I want to go. Right? So are you figuring out ways to make AI your horse? Right, to make it what you're going to take to serve you to take you where you want to go. Right, the United States would have never been explored. The expansion of the United States would have never happened without the horse. Think about it. That was the animal. That was the animal that was the reason that the United States was able to expand to the level that it has. If not for the horse, think of AI like a horse. How are you going to leverage what AI has to offer so that you can get on that motherfucker and go further than you can go alone? But while at the same time understanding the capacity you have and things that it can't compete with. That being your interpersonal skills, right? And all of the other intangibles that human nature still possesses. So when we go back and we look at what we're talking about capacity. How do you identify the capacity that you have in any given area? How do you do your best to maximize the capacity you have and not be fucking delusional in areas that you're just never going to be competitive in? Am I ever going to compete with AI when it comes to the amount of case law I can learn? No. So don't spend any time doing that. Understand a certain level of proficiency, but also understand that that's a level of capacity you will never reach. It is statistically and metaphorically and literally impossible. So then you have the next step where are you working on being thick-skinned to be able to say to yourself, am I putting myself in the environments so that I prepare for the competition? Am I the Buffalo Bills, and do we practice 80% of our practices in the cold? So that way when we play in the cold, we're more ready than the Miami Dolphins.
They get taken out every year because of that.
That are playing in climate-controlled 68 degrees every day. I don't know. Could there be a competitive advantage there? I'd argue yes. So what situations are you putting yourself in that are intentionally thickening your skin? And then number 3 is a word that, as you were saying, it kind of popped in my head, and I was like, ooh, I feel like that can add to what you were saying, which was this idea and this word of tenacity.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep. Are we recording or did it stop? So
tenacity.
The third is this idea of the word tenacity. I think we often get caught up in a linear direction, a linear line, or what word am I looking for? Like a spectrum of good or bad. Did it work? Did it not work? Was it success or failure?
Yep.
Right? This kind of like I forgot what word I'm looking for right now, but this like linear. It's just one or the other. You either won or you lost. You did or you didn't. And I really like this idea of
contrast, maybe.
Yeah, the contrast, and this idea that when a person has resilience, what are the words that you hope people describe about you one day when you're on your deathbed? And that's what I was thinking about the word tenacity. Man, he has tenacity. Well, what does that mean? I don't know what it is, but regardless of how many punches he took, he kept getting up. Right? It's an interesting word that I don't think that many people use. But if you can associate that with who you are, if you can make that one of your core values, I think that's very interesting. Right? Like, what's the code that you live by? Are you advertising yourself like that to the world? Are you advertising yourself are you speaking those words over yourself? Are you speaking those words over your nephew? Is your nephew and be like, show me your tenacity? You want it? Show me your tenacity. Well, what do you mean? Just show me. Show me the tenacity that you have. And we're out here thickening your skin. How's your skin feel? Why do you keep rolling your eyes when I say that? Your skin's not that thick. Until you get to the point that you can hear me say that and you look me straight in the eye and you can just say, I'm ready, then I know you thicken your skin. You ever see when Kobe just has that death stare on his face, blank, looking like Michael Myers from Halloween?
I remember when Matt Barnes, it's that clip when he like,
I remember that.
With that ball in his face and he just stands there.
What is that?
Ready.
Thick skin. Putting himself in the environments. Well, you know, there's even military training where they have gunfire going off, right? So that the environment in and of itself doesn't startle you, distract you. You're used to being in those environments. You're okay with that. A lot of teams practice, even the Cowboys practice when they have an away game, they play with speakers blaring. Because how am I, you know, if I can't hear the call, if every time we're running, you know, we're running practice, but I hear the call and everything is quiet, no problem. But nobody can hear the, you know, when I need to call an audible. But my team can't hear me. Why? Because we didn't put ourselves in the environment that was more realistic. And again, thickening skin. So capacity, identifying the capacity you have in any one given area, maximizing your capacity. Everyone's purpose in life should be to identify and maximize their capacity. Period. End of story. And then you figuring out the path you want to take to maximize your capacity, then I believe that can be associated with the purpose that you have. But the purpose is the same. The purpose is to maximize your capacity. But now figuring out what path you're going to take to get there, I think is a whole different story. And the more that I've personally let go on, and one of the things I spoke about last week was letting go of control. And that's a big problem that I have. I try and control things too much. Right? I try and control versus let them unfold the way they're supposed to. I try and control it. Be like, okay, well, you know, maybe if we put a little more salt and this and that, be like, no, you got to let it simmer. But then I keep turning the heat off and I'm like, is it too hot? How are you going to make that dish? If you keep taking it off the stove, you keep taking it off the heat, right? That's a huge problem that I've had in the past. So let me take it off the pot for a little bit. And is it good? What do you think? You want to try it? Like, how is it? Is it too much salt? Oh, too much salt. Yeah, let me do this. And then taking everybody's opinion versus just making what I want to make. I know I've made that mistake 1,000 times. So now it's understanding the capacity that you have in any one given area, identifying where you want to maximize the capacity in those areas. What are the activities that you need to do to thicken your skin so that you can do it through the tenacity that's going to help you to keep getting up. So do you have the tenacity to keep going through adversity? Do you have the tenacity to keep going through losses? And this idea of thickening your skin, I think, is something that, and as you were saying that, I only thought of it as you were saying a couple of different things, and I'm like, that's interesting. You know what I mean? Like, that's interesting. You know, do I go work out later with no headphones? Right? Do I?
That muscle.
Yeah.
Train that mental muscle.
Right.
It's like David Goggins said he used to run with no music.
Right.
No headphones.
Right. So it's like, you know, what am I doing actively to thicken my skin? And again, I think it's a very interesting way to look at it. And, you know, those were the biggest words that came out of it was capacity, tenacity, and thickening of the skin. So now if we can figure out the best method of doing that, and then realizing that the world is competition.
Man.
The world is competition.
So many nuggets. That was powerful. Extremely powerful. And it kind of taken me in a lot of different directions. You know, I'll speak briefly on the cold plunge. I'll speak briefly on long distance running. I'll speak briefly on that tenacity piece, which is, it's when you face yourself, right? And I think so many times in life, we get to a point to where we face ourselves. We wake up and depending on where our mind has been while we were sleeping, before we went to sleep, or what kind of jumped in our thoughts as soon as we woke up, we have to face ourselves. And I think it's so critical of how we start our day and how that sustains the momentum and the trajectory of our day, right? If we start our day in a very powerful outlook as far as attacking our goals, attacking that next stage in our life that we've been working towards through tenacity, right? I think it's important to look at time as in regards to evolution. You know, this is something that I think about a lot. I was in the locker room and I heard a guy saying, you know, he's getting older. He was like, it's his birthday. I said, man, that's a fortune. I said, what's the alternative? I said, those two words turned back around, he's got his hand out. And he said, I thank you, my friend. I thank you for just saying that. And I was like, wow. I was like, okay, that must have hit him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's his birthday, and he's thinking, oh, I'm turning 57 or whatever it was. Oh, man, I'm getting older. I could see his head was down a little bit. And I said, hey, man, that's a fortune, man. That's a gift. I said, what's the alternative? I think in that moment, he probably thought like, well, shoot, I'm still here. I still got opportunity to be here and experience. Like, it's a gift to grow older.
Yep.
And if we look at growing older in regards of evolution, now being 37 years old, I'm like, I feel great. My body may be in a little bit more pain, but I feel great because I'm wiser. I'm more experienced. I've been through much more, right? My armor is stronger. I feel more prepared. I feel more control. I feel more in command of my life, right? So if we look at growing older as evolving, right? You want to continue to evolve through life. And I think as you increase that tenacity, you increase your pace, you increase your step, you continue to go. I'll go back to what you're saying, like about the cold plunge. It's the first minute and a half. I remember the first minute and a half, and you're sitting in there, and your toes are going numb, and it's just that mental scream. And to your point about simmering, before we take it off the pot, are you able to sit in that? Are you able to be still? Are you able to allow those noise and that adversity that's coming internally that's telling you to quit, that's telling you to retreat, that's telling you to seek comfort? Are you willing to punch through that and to stay the course?
Yep.
Right. A lot of times, I remember when I was first cooking steak, I kept flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping. And they said, hey, don't keep on flipping that steak. Right. It's not done doing what it needs to do. And if you take it off too soon, you're going to mess up the process. A lot of times, if we take ourselves out the heat too soon, we're going to mess up that process of growth. We're going to continue to put ourselves back. Right? We're not going to have the projected outcome that we need to be as tender and to be as juicy and to be as complete, as to be as potent and good as we're supposed to be through life. So it's a lot of what you said, man.
Digging up the seed is another metaphor.
Digging up the seed too.
Digging up the seed is a metaphor. It's growing, but you're like, hold on, let me check.
Right.
And you go, but all of a sudden, whatever that seed needed, it might have grown a little bit, but it needed the pressure. It needed to be surrounded by the dirt.
Big time.
Yeah.
Man, we're running these laps, and I have my nephew for 3.5 weeks, and I'm like, what can we do in 3.5 weeks, right? That's most impactful for him to be around me. And the first thing I said, man, instead of trying to build as much muscle mass as we can in 3.5 weeks, right? That might be just a little pebble grain in the sand. I said, we need to work on that mindset.
Yep.
I need to work on his mindset, that grit, that resilience, that toughness, that tenacity, that thick skin. And so he doesn't understand when we're coming around the corner and he stops at 1.5 miles the first time out. And I'm like, come on. And I'm tending to him, making sure he's all right, he can make it. And then he kind of crutches through. And then the next time he stops at 2 miles. Then the next time he make it 2.5 miles before he stops. Then the third time he's all the way almost at 3 miles, but something in his head says, I don't know if I can do it. And he gives into it. And I turn around and I said, no, stand up. You aren't tired. I can tell. I can see it. You got energy. Come on right now. And I had to meet him with that ferocity in that moment so that he can absorb my energy. And I'm out there screaming at him, growling, come on, find this, figure it, meet yourself and push through. And he went down for a minute and got up and he said, and he just kept going. We come around the back stretch, he starts picking up his knees and sprinting through.
There you go.
And in that moment, I was like, he faced himself and he pushed through. And he doesn't understand when you're on the battlefield, whether it's a sport of your choice, and you meet that moment where you feel like everything's against you, you can't go any further, you're going to tap into that. You're going to remember that. It all goes to your bank account. It's a deposit. When you're in life and you're back against the wall and things happen to you, right? Circumstances happen to you. That is a muscle that now you've strengthened through every little moment that you decided not to quit. You refuse to take yourself off that eye. You refuse to take yourself out of that moment of pain, that moment of discomfort. You stayed in there. You stayed resilient. And that's where it can be so important when it comes to life.
Sure.
Regardless of the sport of choice, right? I told him, I said, have you ever saw the movie 300 or the sequel? He said, nope. I said, we need to watch that for you.
There you go.
And I said, you need to see how those men, those fathers, probably in tears, had to beat down their kids, not in a negative, mentally emotional way, but at a certain age point, they had to teach them about resilience, tenacity, overcoming fear, finding a grit, increasing your capacity to handle and abstain and
Sure.
endure, right? And they knew that that was going to prepare them for the battlefield 7 years down the road.
That's it.
And the moms come out there, oh, you doing, hey,
Yep.
oh, hey, doing what a mom's supposed to be, a nurturer. And the father said, hey, he has to go through this. He has to. And so, man, the tenacity has to be developed.
And sometimes we need to do that to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So the question is that, you know, what is our mind is always going to go back to pattern recognition. Right. So if there are times that we quit in the past, our mind is going back to that. If there are times that we showed resilience in the past, if times that we showed tenacity in the past, our mind is going to go to that. So the question is that when faced with these types of situations, who or what becomes the voice in your mind? And again, we don't need to talk about a society issue and everything is wrong with the modern day culture. But again, not as many young men have that type of voice to speak over to them, to let them know this is the voice you could, would, and should be hearing when you're faced with this type of challenge. When you're faced with this type of challenge, this is what I'm going to say to you, and this is hopefully what you'll be saying to yourself one day, and then that will be then what you say to your sons one day. And a lot of young men don't have that. I know I didn't have it, right? To be able to push through and to have those types of strong male figures in your life that understand the words that need to be said to help push through to find your capacity, to find a man's capacity. But the only way that a man's ever going to find his capacity is if he gets, you know, not only push through of what his needs are, or not only a push through of what the world from a pleasure perspective of what he's truly capable of by being around other men that are also seeking and pushing for their own capacity. And when you surround yourself with other men that are constantly challenging themselves for their own capacity, it could, would, and should inspire you to continue to push through to find your capacity. Ready?
My man.